right. So this is going to be our first episode, True Wrestling Fans discussions. We're going to go on over a lot of different topics. Montreal Screwjob, something we wanted to talk about for a long time. So I'm Mike, and this is
I'm
Mr.
Frank.
Frank right here. And we've been friends for years, and we're big wrestling fans. And Frank has always been fairly consistent on his stance on Montreal, and so have I. So we're going to
And
get into
today
it.
we're going to tell you why we feel the way we do. And you guys be the judge of who you side with on that day, fateful day in November 1997.
A day that'll live in infamy, as they say.
24 years later, we're still talking about it. It's one of the most tragic or one of the best moments in wrestling history. You be
Yep.
the judge.
Hands down. Hands down. All right. So you want to do your intro or what?
Well, you want to know who I'm siding with.
There we go.
I mean,
That's
all right, I'll leave the music.
Yeah,
Everybody else can dance to that on their own.
So let's get into it. So Bret, they actually had a good relationship early on. When the Rockers came in, Bret said he was actually looking forward to working with Shawn and the Rockers when he saw them, and they had a lot of good matches. Rockers
Even
actually
teaming up.
Yeah.
Remember Survivor
Series.
Series 88?
Right.
They were part of the 10-man tag team, and the Rockers and Hart Foundation, along with the Bulldogs and everybody else, they had good chemistry in the ring.
Yep, that's correct. That did happen. And they actually they fought on Saturday night's main event, the match that never aired.
Unfortunately. With the ring rope breaking and the Rockers winning the tag team titles.
The Rockers won the tag team titles, and the ring rope broke, and the referee didn't know what the hell he was doing, and Bret was trying to explain to him, look, this is gonna be taped, so we could just restart the match. Just fix the rope, we'll restart the match. But the referee
remember when he tried to do the heart attack and he couldn't even go up against the rope. It was
he liked the rope. Yeah,
they made a good thing out of a bad situation, but unfortunately Vince decided that it never existed.
Yeah,
he wasn't going to run with it again, and that was the only time the Rockers were ever considered for the tag team titles.
And in typical Vince fashion, he tells them, "No, don't worry, we're gonna put the belts on you later on. Don't worry about it." Never put the belts on them ever again.
Well, technically, he did. Both of them technically did get them, just not together.
Right, exactly. So I guess he wasn't lying.
Marty Jannetty had it, with the 1, 2, 3 kids. Shawn Michaels had it. Numerous people, John Cena, Diesel, DX finally got him.
Well, so technically.
So he wasn't lying.
Right.
Just didn't specify together.
Exactly. So later on, they end up going on their singles run. Bret has his singles run. Shawn does. Bret gets the IC title. They have their matches together. They had a good ladder match at a house show. They end up ultimately facing each other, champion versus champion, at Survivor Series 92. But that was a match that was just thrown in together at the last second.
Yeah, there was no backstory to it.
No.
They just threw it together, and then for whatever reason it was, Shawn Michaels thought that his career had gone stale at that point. There was no direction for him. And then he goes to Vince McMahon, and Vince says, okay, Saturday night main event. He goes and faces the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental title. One thing leads to the other, and he's the champion. We got these two going at it at Survivor Series. Basically, the main event at that one was supposed to be Savage and Warrior versus Razor Ramon and Ric Flair, but we all know what happened to that one.
That's a story for another day.
Exactly.
But yeah, eventually, they go on. Bret Hart goes on to win the championship. Shawn Michaels does the Intercontinental title thing. Eventually, in '96, he gets the push leading up to the Ironman. It had a great build-up. I love the storyline. I love those old training vignettes.
Yes.
Where they show Shawn in Texas training with Jose Lothario, and then they show Bret Hart.
Bret's up in Canada doing his thing.
It's like Rocky IV. It was like Rocky IV.
You
see Bret up there jogging, and
every time they showed those, I always thought, put the Rocky montage music in there for the two of them, because that's what it was doing. Mm-hmm. How much they had to train, and I believe it was Pat Patterson that came up with the idea for the Ironman match, and Vince was hesitant with it,
right? Because
he said, "There's no way we can keep somebody in their seats for an hour
straight."
He said, "These two guys can."
Yeah, if any two could, then it would definitely be them. Ironman match. Ironman match. They
Yes.
didn't think anybody else could pull it off, but they had confidence. Pat Patterson had confidence, and Bret and Sean had confidence in themselves that they could pull this hour Ironman match. And I was even skeptical when I thought about an hour match, but you're talking about two of the greatest, wrestlers of all time.
And in other
You know,
federations like WCW, they adapted to the 30-minute Ironman match. We all remember the Ricky Steamboat, Rick Rude matches, which were classic.
right.
But like you, I was skeptical too. 1 hour, these two guys in the ring, could they really pull off that much stamina? And if you look over the history of how many Ironman matches they were, nothing is in comparison to these two. They were both phenomenal in the ring.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, they great conditioning.
Yes.
Those guys trained very hard. They had good conditioning. They weren't going to gas out, especially Sean. Sean, Sean wasn't, because he wrestled at, a very fast pace where Bret was a little more methodical in his style.
He was the wrestler's wrestler where Sean was the charismatic high flyer.
Right, yeah. It was a good contrast. Mm-hmm. But the match was great. The tremendous match. Well, I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. At the end of the match, and apparently this is some of the genesis of where the heat started. So apparently Sean, and you can see it in the match, he says something to the referee. And apparently he says, "Get that piece of shit out of the ring," or "that piece of garbage out of the ring," referring to Bret.
Yes.
And Bret heard that, and then Bret got upset because he felt like, we just had this great match. Why would he say that? They went into overtime and everything, and apparently that started something with him where he felt like he didn't have respect for him. And the way it's been told was that Sean was basically saying like he wanted him to get out of the ring because they had already planned like his celebration. It wasn't anything personal against Bret. It was just that they had a planned celebration for him winning the title, and Bret couldn't be in the ring when that was happening. So
now here's the question everybody has, and I still to this day I have it. Why is it now? Was it a storyline, or was it something that happened that for the reason why it went over the hour limit? Because in this case, I've got to side with Bret Hart. You have a 1 hour time limit. You have no fall once the match ended. It ends in a draw. Why is it that they had to go to an extra 8 minutes, which I believe could have been a little sooner? Why is it that they had to go to a sudden death when they already wrestled the full hour? Why wasn't there a fall to begin with? Was this to build heat with them, or was this something they just didn't plan?
Well, apparently it was planned. Apparently they planned it to go into overtime. And remember, was it Gorilla? It was Gorilla Monsoon that said there must be a winner.
Yes, he was
Gorilla,
at ringside. Right? Yeah, he was the acting president.
And I think even before that, when they were discussing when they were doing the thing on Raw and everything, building the matchup, I believe he said that there had to be a winner. That's what it was. So it was part of the storyline, and they wanted to put Sean over while also not bringing Bret down, and that gave Bret, that could help build the rematch. It could give Bret the argument to say, "Hey, look, I had the guy beat in the middle of the ring. I had him," and it's funny because I used to have this argument in school with kids. I remember having this argument. I said the Bret had him dead in the middle of the ring. He wasn't going anywhere. They rang the bell. It should have been a draw. That's it. You don't just stop the match and then to start it over again. So that was intentional. It wasn't a WCW screw up like with Hogan and Sting in '97. That's another. We got to do a video on that. With Nick Patrick and the fast count, and that was a disaster. But
Bret Hart being the referee.
Yeah. But that's another story.
That's why Bret left. Go be a referee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that ends up happening, and then Bret leaves for a while. He goes, does the Lonesome Dove TV series.
Now, was it injury or was it feeling sorry for himself for the reason why he left?
The reason why Bret left, I think, was he wanted a break, and he also his contract was up, and he wanted to renegotiate. And at the time, he actually negotiated with WCW.
Yeah, he was talking to them, and Vince was offering him the 20-year life contract with them.
Yeah, Bischoff had offered him, I believe it was $9 million.
Over 3 years.
Yeah, guaranteed contract. Mm-hmm. Went back, told Vince. Vince said, "I can't give you that, but I can give you a longer contract with, even after you retire from wrestling, you'll still work behind the scenes. You'll still be employed. So,
and I remember Bret saying from the Wrestling with Shadows documentary that he said, just offer me an extra $1. Just tell me you want me here.
Right.
And I'll stay.
I'll stay.
And Vince told him, I want you to stay, but I can't give you the money.
Right. I
can't offer you what WCW is offering you right now. So if you need to, then go.
I'm trying to look up the numbers right here. Hold on a second.
I believe what Vince offered him was $2 million a year, $1.5 million to $2 million a year, maybe a little bit more.
So apparently, Bret turned down $2.8 million a year for 3 years from WCW. He ultimately signed for $1.5 million with the WWF, $1.5 million a year.
And that was in '96.
That was in '96, yeah. 7 years as a wrestler, and then 7 years as an advisor for $500K, and 10 years as $250,000 and as a company to work for the company like on standby for whenever they needed him, which is actually, not a bad contract.
Well, if you think about it, he would have been one of the best guys to be behind the scenes if NXT existed back then. Yeah. Because who better than to learn from?
Yeah.
The man, like I said, he was a wrestler's wrestler. He was one of the best in the ring, and I don't have animosity towards him in any way. I respect the guy tremendously, except in this instance, the way the business part of it went.
Right at the end,
the man is one of the top 5 best wrestlers of all time, hands down. No
question. But so what ends up happening is he comes back. He feuds with Stone Cold. Great. Then we got that. That'll be another video we'll do on that rivalry, which was tremendous.
That made Steve Austin's career, which was already accelerating. Mm-hmm. But to work, he and Austin had said to work with the likes of Bret Hart was just out. It was breathtaking. He said he appreciated it. He was glad that he was able to work with him, and his career took off from there. But that was a good way to bring Bret back, because you're facing what they called a baby heel. Because Austin is still trying to be the persona of being a bad guy, and everybody's cheering for him. Bret Hart comes back. The reception wasn't as what he wanted. It wasn't a standing ovation, which I think started the whole thing when he returned.
Yeah. In the meantime, Shawn is the champion, and the business is bad, and no fault of Shawn's.
No,
the business was down for a lot of different reasons. WCW was just starting to pick up steam, and also WWE, the direction they were going in just wasn't good.
The characters were still clownish and kid friendly. The WCW rather had they brought in Scott Hall, they brought in Kevin Nash, they started the NWO. I mean, Shawn Michaels was trying to do the best he could with what little they had. And it was no fault of his, and the pressure, I believe, was too much for him. And we go back to the curtain call. Everything that happened with the curtain call, they could not punish Shawn Michaels because he was a champion. Not to mention the fact that I believe that if Vince McMahon would have punished him, then you're talking about maybe he jumped ship and heads to WCW.
Yeah, there was always that possibility. Absolutely.
So then. Shawn Michaels was able to get away with a lot.
Pretty much.
But it was mainly him venting. Like I said, you're running the company when it's on its last leg, and this is your first title run, and look what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Triple H takes the brunt of the punishment from the curtain call. Shawn Michaels is running, and nothing against Shawn. Every match he had at every pay-per-view was top quality. If either he fought Vader or Mankind or the British Bulldog or Owen Hart, whatever match he had, he delivered every night.
Yeah, absolutely. So like we said, like I was saying, it wasn't his fault. Business was down. But the thing was, when Bret came back, he did his feud with Stone Cold. But all that was leading to the rematch between Bret and Shawn at WrestleMania 13, where Shawn was supposed to return the favor. That was always the plan. But then comes February '97. Shawn has a knee injury, and he loses his smile, drops the belt, relinquishes.
Shortly after he had what I say was one of the best rematches for the WWE title against Psycho Sid at the Alamo Dome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, at the Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
So he relinquishes the title, And now apparently Bret was furious because the plan all along was for him to get his, the get back, right?
Now here's my question,
yeah.
because they're going to give him the chance. Then why wasn't it that Bret Hart didn't win the Rumble? Because again, you got to look at it. Steve Austin was eliminated during the Rumble. We all saw that. Referee's back was turned. He comes back in the ring, eliminates Bret Hart. Why is it that if that was the plan all along, that Steve Austin wins the Rumble but doesn't go to WrestleMania with the title shot? I always wondered that, even back then, that if that was the direction they wanted, they didn't give him the Rumble. And then they wound up having that fatal four-way at the In Your House for the vacant title.
Right.
But I always wondered why they didn't give Bret Hart his second Rumble, because really, technically, he's never really had one on his own. Because you remember he had to split the 1994 one with Lex Luger.
I'm assuming that they probably were going to have Austin versus Bret, and the winner of that would go to the Royal Rumble, go to WrestleMania for the title. Assuming that Shawn never dropped the belt. Never. I'm assuming. I don't know, because that doesn't make sense. You're right.
That always bothered me. Like, okay, if Austin won the Rumble, why isn't he at WrestleMania 13 challenging the champion? And if Bret was supposed to face Shawn, why isn't he won the Rumble? And regardless, Bret's still the challenger for whoever after Shawn drops the belt.
Right.
It was a little chaos over those few months, because you remember the title changed multiple times. On Monday Night Raw, Bret Hart had it, Psycho Sid had it. And then they just, unfortunately, they just threw together the main event, which, wasn't fair to The Undertaker, who was a workhorse in there and was well deserving of the title opportunity. And it just, I always tried to put that together for years, why it is that it wound up the way it did.
Yeah. But here's another question. Was Shawn really injured? Was his knee really that bad?
I think because WrestleMania that year was in March, if I'm not mistaken, March in 1997, because normally they jump from March to April.
Yeah.
Beginning of February, he goes out with the injury. I believe he had an injury. As far as the extent of what he was talking about, I don't think it was as severe as he was leading on. Because you remember, you have a knee injury, there's no way you're doing a backflip off the top rope.
Yeah.
6 weeks later. I think there was something to it. I just don't think the severity of it was huge.
Yeah, I think.
But the only person that knows that is Shawn.
It's Shawn, yeah, exactly. I think he probably was. I think that
was he burnt out at the time? Possibly. Did he do it because he didn't want to face Bret Hart? I don't want to speculate on that, because I don't want to put his character into question. Like I said, only he knows the truth behind it. We can only speculate the answer.
Right. No, absolutely. So what ends up happening is, we know Austin and Bret end up tearing the house down.
Absolutely.
Great match.
If you ask anybody the top 3 moments of Austin's career, and when we get to him in a later episode, I'll definitely bring these up. Number 1, when Austin 3:16 was born. And number 2, and you can even rival those two as 1 and 2, is the bloody expression on his face when he'd ever passed out to the sharpshooter.
Yeah.
And of course, to me, number 3 is him and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14, because I don't care how hurt Shawn Michaels was, he put on one of the best performances of his career, considering how he felt.
I watched that match recently. I think Shawn.
You too? So did
I. This is just speculation. I think Shawn might have been selling that back injury in that match. I think
even though he wasn't medically cleared.
I think he might have been selling it. I don't know.
More so than, like, okay, the perfect example of Shawn overselling something. 2005 match with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, but that was that was
overselling it.
Yeah.
Do you think the severity of the back was what? Like, you believe he could have had that match without all the grimacing on his face and all that stuff?
I don't know, man, because that's the Shawn back then.
You remember the way his eyes looked right before he went out, and they were telling Earl Hebner to feel better because he was out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he had a heart attack or something had happened, and his eyes just looked like the porch light was on. Nobody was home. They had him so medicated that he couldn't. I don't even think he knew where the ring was.
Maybe.
And that's why Triple H was out there with him. I think his discs were completely shattered, which is why he never fought at No Way Out in February, and why he went from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania without fighting.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think it was there. Whether or not it was completely as he says, who knows?
A lot of people speculate. I mean, but
But
who
if it
knows?
was hurting as bad as he claimed it was, then the man put on a hell of a performance despite the back.
Yeah, no, I mean, no question. I'm trying to look up this. What else? All right, so let's fast forward to April '97. We got Shawn Michaels cut a promo on Bret, and I don't know if you remember this promo where he was talking about how Bret Hart stabbed the WWE in the back to go negotiate with WCW, and
I
how Bret,
remember every
yeah,
promo that year
hmm
because they put on some of the best promos in the ring on Monday Night Raw that year. Nobody else in comparison, especially with the Playgirl and Bret in the wheelchair. I mean, these guys just the banter between them went back and forth. And you remember they were supposed to fight at King of the Ring '97,
that's right.
and it wound up being tag champion versus tag champion.
hmm
And I was looking forward to seeing them two finally in the ring, but then Bret got hurt as well. Now,
Bret, the irony is Bret injured his knee that year too.
yeah, and you got to wonder, did he lose his smile? Was he doing it
Uh,
to spite Shawn?
Despite
Again, nobody knows.
Brett said that after he hurt his knee that he felt a little bad for saying that Shawn faked his injury because he's like, oh, I now that I went through a knee injury myself, I could understand how knees are very tricky. That's what Brett said. Because remember, he shot on him and he said, I think was it WrestleMania where he was like, you and that little
Oh, he came out
pussyfoot
there
injury.
yes, and Vince McMahon's holding Shawn back,
Yeah,
and he's like, "I'm not going in the ring." He goes, "Yeah, you
right.
sit there with your pussyfoot injury." And I didn't like the fact that he came out during that match because it took away from the Undertaker and Sid, which was already a throw together match, and it was focusing more on these two, and it kind of the respect level, to me, might have dropped a little bit for Bret, but he was looking for the heel turn. So I just think that, having Shawn Michaels commentate the main event just aggravated it along, and it took away from Sid and Taker.
No, definitely, I could see that. I could definitely see it taken away, for sure. But Brett, so Shawn cuts that promo on him. Then I remember, let's see, it's May. This is May 12th of 1997. Brett cuts a promo on Shawn, goes overtime by accident. They say he went overtime by accident because he couldn't hear the signal to cut. Shawn comes in, throws the super kick, which is one of the greatest moments when he super kicks him in the wheelchair and Brett just falls backwards. Never made air. And Shawn was pissed and felt like Brett did
Was
it on
that was the
purpose.
one in the ring?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one where they were talking. Yes, that did actually make the air, or
they aired
they
it
showed it the following week.
when they showed it the following week. But
Yeah,
initially, it didn't make air, and Shawn was livid because he felt that Bret Hart did it on purpose. Now, Bret said he didn't do it on purpose. Who knows what the truth is? But that led us to the infamous Sunny Days promo. And this is where it really gets bad between the two of them.
Oh yeah,
because he was basically insinuating that Bret was having an affair with Sunny. So,
my honest opinion, I don't think he was.
I don't think he was. I know they were good friends, but I don't think
She was married to Chris Candido at the
and
time, and
she was in love with and she was still in love with Shawn.
yeah, and Bret. I mean, we can say a lot of things about Bret Hart, but something like that, his morals, no, I don't believe it.
I don't think
see. He's not that type of guy.
and to this day she said nothing ever happened between the two of them.
Yeah,
So
I think that was just Sean ribbing on him.
That's basically what it was. She was just trying to get a rise at him, and it worked because Bret was fuming because once he got back home, his father confronted him and asked him, "Are you having an affair with Sunny?" And then he had
that hit home. And considering that everything here is scripted and something personal like that hits home, because I believe even his wife confronted him about
it.
Yeah, no.
So that caused a lot of problems. So then apparently, let's see what's next. This is the okay. So June 6, 1990. 7 is the infamous hair pulling match backstage, where Sean and Bret got into a legitimate fisticuffs. Apparently, Bret confronted him, said, "You're messing with my family," and Sean basically blew him off. They threw a couple punches, got into a hair pulling match. Everyone came in, pulled them apart, and Bret Hart ripped out a clump of Sean's hair.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Sean grabs the piece of hair from the floor. He runs into Vince's office and he slams it. And he says, I'm quitting. This is not a safe work environment." So that was a big disaster where they had to have a meeting with the both of them. And, basically from that point on, from that point on, to me, there was really no turning back between the two of them. Once it got physical, even though apparently they had a meeting and they squashed everything and calmed everything down, but from that point on, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse from that point on. So apparently we go over to SummerSlam, where apparently it was planned that Bret was going to spit at Sean.
But did Sean know this?
Supposedly Sean knew, but that Bret, he spit too much.
Yes.
He was just kind of supposed to like spit in his direction, not a glob of.
Yeah, he gave the Vince McMahon loogie.
Yeah. Apparently,
here's the question I've got leading into that match. By this point, Bret's already negotiating with both WWE and WCW.
Well, I don't not yet.
They were interested in him, and him and Bret, Vince and Bret had some conversations leading to there. And my only question is, if you knew this is a possibility, again, why put the title on him?
Well, I know what you're saying. We're gonna get to that because I actually have all the dates. I have the dates here.
But yeah, the whole Shawn Michaels hitting Taker with the chair, and then he had to count the 3 count, because if he did anything that was detrimental to the match, then his career was over.
Yeah.
So he pretty much, you saw how he counted the 3 and left the ring in disgust when Bret's putting up his fingers yelling, "I'm 5-time champion."
Yeah. So I got it right here. So apparently this is early October. I don't have the exact date. Vince goes to Bret and tells him, "My company's in financial peril. I can't afford your contract anymore." Tells him, "I need to get out of this contract," even though he had signed Bret to a 20-year deal, and Bret had turned down a lot more money from WCW. He tells him, "I want out of the contract." Now, basically what it sounded like was Sean basically told him it was, and it's a little speculation.
It was him or me. It was him or me.
It's him or me.
And also that's Vince telling him, the company's direction, I don't see you in it. Which, if you think about it, do you honestly if Bret Hart sticks around through 1998, do you see him fitting into the Attitude Era in the direction they went in?
I think
everything they're doing.
I think there was ways. I think there was ways.
I think Vince would have had him as a mid-carder.
He might have pushed him down the card. But I mean, if you think about it, imagine Bret Hart would have stuck around, and imagine him having matches later on with Kurt Angle, and then later on Eddie Guerrero coming in, and Benoit, and all of that talent. I mean,
the one match I actually liked,
The Rock even.
Yeah. Well, one match I liked with Bret Hart when he got to WCW was in 1999 for the vacated WCW title. Him and Benoit in Toronto fought in the main event.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best matches I have ever. That is one of the pay-per-views I love in WCW, and there was not many that I can actually stand through and watch the full thing. This one particular pay-per-view saw Bret Hart face Sting and Benoit on the same night. And the two of them had a match that these guys could have fought 100 times on pay-per-views. And imagine if Bret Hart was still in the WWE when the Radicals showed up, how many great matches he could have had, like you said, with Eddie Guerrero and Benoit and Angle. He did fight The Rock.
Yeah, but it was
Rocky Maivia.
It was Rocky Maivia.
Just like, imagine if he would have fought the game Triple H instead of the Hunter Hearst Helmsley that he was fighting on.
No, there was They could have done so. They could have done so much, but this is what the real problem was. The problem was, if you remember at the beginning, when they turned Bret heel, right? And Bret didn't want to become a heel because he had been a babyface for so long.
Honestly, I think he did a great job
He did a tremendous job.
He was a great heel.
But I'm going to tell you what messed up his heel run when they turned around and then they made Shawn heel.
Even though you got two guys that are heel, who you going to root for?
That was the problem. Even though Shawn was a great heel, don't get me wrong.
Because they didn't turn the Generation X fan favorite until, I believe, the night after WrestleMania.
Right. And by then, Shawn was already gone. So it kind of stole his thunder. Like, this is the spot that you gave him, and then you gave Shawn that spot, you know? So, I mean, whatever happens, he wants to get out of the contract. That's the bottom line. So he even told Bret, listen, now I'll help negotiate the contract with Bischoff for you. And Bret was like, absolutely not. Like, I have my own lawyer or whatever to negotiate the contract. But what that is going to lead us to what happens right here on October 12th. He's already negotiating with WCW. He has a meeting with Shawn, and he tells Shawn, you know, whatever happened between us, it's done. It's in the past. And I want you to know, like, I'm willing to put you over. Like, there's no problem. And then Shawn tells him, I appreciate that, but I want you to know I'm not willing to do the same.
He's being honest.
Yes, but that sets into motion what would become the Montreal Screwjob. Because at that point, Bret said, if you don't respect me, I'm not putting this guy over. Point blank, period. Shawn had a lot of balls to say that to somebody like Bret. I mean, I understand Shawn was at the same level, if not a little higher. But Bret had been there for a long time. He was respected. And for you to say, I'm not going to put you over, I mean, what's the excuse for that?
He was a hot-headed youngster with all the talent in the world that his animosity for Bret was way too strong.
Yeah.
And the one thing, at least he didn't say, yeah, okay, I'll put you over.
And then not.
Stabs him in the back. He was being honest. I mean, even though he was being what Pat Patterson would call a real prick, because he said outside the business, Shawn Michaels was a hell of a guy. Working with him in there was a totally different 360.
It was a whole different thing, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so Bret ends up signing with WCW. He got a $2.5 million a year contract, which is less. You know, that's almost, if you look at it, it's about, over the course of 3 years, it's $900,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of 3 years. Almost $1 million less than what he was originally going to get.
Well, he had already turned down one contract. Bischoff wasn't exactly going to come back with more.
He had no leverage at that point. Even though he lied to Bischoff to try to get leverage, he told Bischoff, hey, look, I have an out in my contract. I can opt out of this thing if I don't like the way things are going, which was BS. That wasn't true.
Yeah, because Vince didn't do that.
But he tried to use that for leverage. But as they go, you know, they're trying to figure out this thing. Bret's refusing to go over. I got it all written down. Bret's refusing to drop the title. Vince finally says, okay, you can go over. You know, you can go over. And then he changes his mind. Apparently he had a conversation with Shawn where he told Shawn, listen, as long as you put Bret over, Shawn, as long as you put Bret over, Bret's going to put you over. But you have to give him the respect. And Shawn said, absolutely not. This guy's leaving at WCW. I'm not putting him over no matter what. That leads closer and closer to Montreal. Now, here's the thing. Bret Hart had creative control over the course of the last 60 days of his contract. He had creative control. Not only that, there's this myth that Bret's contract expired the day after Survivor Series. That's not true. Bret
actually, it was the night of Survivor Series.
No.
Because they said if he came out on Monday Night Raw the next night, he no longer worked for them.
Right. That's the WWE story. But according to Bischoff and according to Bret, and I think Dave Meltzer, Bret's contract ran through December. So it ran through December. He wasn't signed to WWE.
So if he showed up the next night, he was still under contract.
Yes. So they did.
Well, that actually makes sense on why it is that Bret Hart didn't show up until Starrcade.
He couldn't. Otherwise,
because
he
was still under contract.
He was still under contract. That's correct. Not only that, here's another piece of information. Bret Hart had only he signed for X amount of dates. He only had to perform X amount of dates in his contract. He had already gone over that. If Bret didn't want to show up to Survivor Series, he didn't have to. He really didn't have to because he had already worked the dates necessary. But he did it because he loved the business and he did it for Vince. That's why he showed up. He didn't have to do any more dates. He was going to get a bonus. Obviously, you get pay-per-view bonuses.
Yeah.
So it's not like he showed up for free. But my point is he didn't have to, and he did. He did. So it leads into the whole thing. Apparently, Cornette said that he had came up with the idea of putting Bret in the sharpshooter at a meeting with Vince. He threw the idea out, and he's like,
That's one of 3 people that are claiming to that.
Along with Russo.
And Earl Hebner.
Yeah. He told him, said, hey, listen, just put him in the sharpshooter. And then Vince shrugged it off like, whatever. And apparently, he's taking credit for the so-called idea. But the real thing that happened, which I think we can agree on, was that infamous conference call between Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Vince.
Where Triple H finally told him, F him. If he's not going to do business with you, you do business for him.
Yeah.
And you know what? I 100% agree to it. You're going to stand there and you're going to tell your boss, I'm leaving your company. I'm going to your rival. I have your title. I am not dropping it. I will come out the next night when I'm no longer under contract and tell you I can't work here anymore, and I'll drop the title in the middle of the ring and I will leave. Okay, here's my issue with that. And this has happened before. 1995, Medusa, a.k.a. Alundra Blaze, shows up on Nitro with the women's title, throws it in the trash can. Is anybody going to sit there and tell me that Bischoff gets wind of Bret Hart keeping the title through Survivor Series, that he doesn't offer him another $5 million to come to Monday Nitro with the WWE Championship? And you think that Bret Hart, his morals, wouldn't have turned around and said, you know what, I could use the money, I'll do it. Even though he claims to this day he would have never done that.
Well, there's a couple of things. Well, one, he still, as we just discussed, he was still in the contract. So that wasn't going to happen next day on Nitro. And 2, WCW and WWF at that point had been through a lot of litigation. They had already, they sued over the whole Medusa thing. They sued over the Medusa thing.
Yep.
They sued over Hall and Nash because they said that even though they're Hall and Nash, they're still acting like Diesel and Razor Ramon.
Yes.
So,
and they were.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's some truth to that. So because of that, Bischoff has gone on record and said, with all the lawsuits and everything, he's like, I'm not going to have Bret come out with the belt for me to get sued again. He said Turner Broadcasting was already angry at me for all these lawsuits. So I don't believe Bret would have shown up with the title. I don't. And Bret was willing to drop. Bret said, I'll drop the title to the Brooklyn Brawler. I'll drop the title to the Brooklyn Brawler. Anybody. I'll drop it to Shamrock. I'll drop it to Taker, which the other thing is, too, there was an easy fix in this when you really think about it. All they had to do was have Bret fight Undertaker for the title. Undertaker gets it, and then Shawn beats Undertaker.
I'll do you one better. Like Jim Cornette had said, if you knew this guy was leaving, why not drop the title a month prior instead of that flag match when it was Bret Hart and the British Bulldog versus Vader and Patriot? Instead of that, why not have him defend the title against either Vader or even the Undertaker and drop the title there? Yeah. And then you go into Montreal Survivor Series and have a classic Survivor Series match with the Hart Foundation over any 4 guys you put together. They come out winning it in a sweep, and he leaves with a standing ovation and his head held high.
Yeah.
Easily. Instead of this.
Yeah. Instead of, it didn't have to come to that, but just Vince had it in his head.
And because I guess Bret also wasn't willing to play ball on his final night because he claimed, and he was a huge role model to everybody in Canada. He was a superhero to them, and he didn't want to lose the title in Montreal, in Canada, because they even offered up the thing. Well, why not lose the title the night before in Detroit. or 2 nights ago when they had a house show in Toronto, in Canada? It's because he said, I'm going into the card as champion. I'm not going to let them down. But everybody knows that every WWE card has that little thing at the bottom that says card subject to change. He was not willing to work with them at all.
It was. I mean, listen. I mean, there's a lot of guilty parties. I mean, it could have. The bottom line. I agree, but I feel like it ultimately it falls on Vince, because Vince could have avoided it. Vince knew these guys hated each other. He knew they hated each other legitimately. So why the hell would you put them in the main event under those circumstances?
Why couldn't they have fought months prior to that at an In Your House, and even Sean takes the title off him in October or even September.
Yeah.
Instead of milking the championship, because remember, Bret, his first title defense on an In Your House after the SummerSlam was against the Patriot, a guy nobody really ever even heard of, and because he got a fluke win against him on Monday Night Raw. Shawn Michaels could have easily beaten him on one of those, and again, you don't have this problem in Survivor Series.
And not only that, that match was garbage. You know, they only really did Shawn versus Bret at Survivor Series. They only did about not even half of the match that they had planned out. Like Bret went over it in a shoot interview, and he said like they still had another like 15, 20 minutes planned out for that match after he put him in the sharpshooter.
I think they were having difficulty during it because remember, a lot of it was outside.
It was brawling. They were trying to break that up. They said that's how he had planned it. They planned it to be just a street fight. Then it goes into the match. And he said they had this whole thing. It was supposed to be a big schmoz at the end, run-ins and everything. Like one of those old WCW Nitro main events that everything was a damn run-in.
Yeah, Bulldog and Owen come out. Yeah. Austin possibly.
Right. But my thing is the other thing is you expose the business. You exposed the business because everyone saw that Bret they didn't even tap out back then. I don't know if you remember. There was no tapping. Like you had to actually verbally.
You had to say it.
Yeah.
Which is why Earl Hebner, when he looked at Shawn Michaels putting it on him, just as Bret is reversing it, you see Hebner going for the belt. Same thing they did a year later to Mick Foley.
Yeah.
You know, slap in the face to Bret Hart. They did the same thing then.
Pretty much. You know.
But yeah, you didn't tap out back then. You had to actually yell, "I quit."
Yeah, you exposed the business. Everyone saw what happened. You know, to me, it didn't make sense for business. I understand what he said, all the time-honored tradition and all this other stuff, but that ending could have been avoided. Then it leads into the whole backstage thing where Vince was hiding inside the locker room, and Undertaker had to go get him. You know that story, right?
Yes.
Undertaker
and that's a guy that wasn't exactly happy with what was going on because you're talking. There's a guy that's been there 7 years. He's one of your most loyal wrestlers, and now he's starting to question the man he works for.
Yeah, and
what happened.
He said, "Why didn't he come to me?" I saw an interview with Undertaker. He's like, "All Vince had to do was come to me. Me and Bret were good friends. Bret would have dropped the title to me. We could have avoided this whole thing."
Exactly.
You know, and not only
and then Shawn takes it from him later on.
Yeah, and getting back to your boy Triple H. I forgot to mention this.
My boy.
Yeah, that your boy Triple H. We know that you're the biggest Triple H fan in the world.
You can't question the man's integrity in the ring.
Okay, but
regardless of what he's done off camera.
Okay, fine. But getting back to him, I'm going to tell you what my problem is with him saying that. Okay, think about this.
Doing business for him,
right? Think about this. At that point, Triple H has been there for what? 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years? How long was Bret? Bret was there for what, 13, 14 years? Since the early 80s, 83, 84, whenever he came in, right?
So you're upset with the young guy trying to make a name for himself.
Who the hell is Triple H?
A young guy.
Who the hell is he to be? Why is he even in that meeting? Let me ask you that. Why is he even in that meeting?
Because he's part of the clique.
And he was riding Shawn's coattails, you know.
Did he? Okay. You act like Triple H asked to be in this. He was handpicked. Remember, Shawn handpicked his boys.
Well, he was carrying Shawn's bags and Diesel's bags, and you know he was a designated driver, right?
Yeah, because he was the low man on the totem pole.
He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. So when they used to go get smashed everywhere, he used to drive.
He's the one that drove them all around in the van. Yeah, I remember the story.
Remember what he said years later? I used Shawn Michaels to get to the top, just like he used me. He's trying to use me to stay at the top.
It's part of the business.
And that was a shoot. I think that was a shoot.
But look at it. A guy that's been there 2 years trying to make a name for himself, he's already taken the brunt of the punishment for the curtain call in '96. Okay, he took it like a man and did everything they asked of him. He even postponed his King of the Ring celebration because he was supposed to be in 1996. Thank God because Austin 316 would have never existed.
So it worked out.
Exactly. You got a guy, a young, hungry individual that sees the opportunity to make a name for himself, to put himself in the position of trying getting into the boss's ear and go, you know what? Screw him. Do business for him.
I got you, but at the same time, he's just trying to brown nose and get over, because at the end of the day, and this is what Bret said. Yeah, this is what Bret said. He says, at the end of the day, we're all wrestlers. You're supposed to be with the boys. At the end of the day, you're supposed to be with the boys, not with the office. And he was with the office, and Sean was to a degree, and Sean said, oh, that he wasn't happy to do, even though he had his problems with Bret, that he wasn't happy to do it. It wasn't fun being in that situation. I you know why that's BS? And he says, oh, I was just a soldier taking orders. That's the way I looked at it. To me, that's absolute BS. I'm going to tell you why. How many times has Sean refused to do jobs and refused to lose titles?
A bunch.
Exactly. So it's not like every time they told him to do something, he was like, yes, boss, I'll do it.
No, him and Vince would have their arguing fits, right, like a father and a son. And then cooler heads would prevail. Sean would go back and go, okay, I'll do it. He wouldn't agree to it right off. And Vince knew this. This is the game that the two of them had that played. Vince would tell him, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And he would tear up Vince's office and slam the door, yelling, I quit. Come back an hour later. All right, I'm there for you. I'll do what you need to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think that Sean.
That's just the relationship they had.
Well, I mean, now Sean is a different person, but back then, any Shawn Michaels story that you hear from that era is always bad. Is always bad.
Everything that was going on in his life and stuff, and I mean, we all heard the story of the club in Syracuse. Yeah. He goes up there. He's only with Sean Waltman. The rest of the guys are off doing house shows, and he's mouthed off to a couple of
Right. And this time Diesel
and Scott Hall aren't there.
Yeah.
Hunter wasn't there.
Yeah.
Only Sean is there.
Where X-Pac messed up out of his mind, and Bulldog messed up out of his mind.
Yep. And a couple of Army guys took care of business.
Yeah, and the story changes too. Sometimes you hear it's like 5, then you hear it's 10. Nobody knows.
I always heard it was about 6.
Bret said it was a bunch of cheerleaders.
5 or 6.
Bret said it was a bunch of cheerleaders that beat him up.
Maybe it was a couple of Bret's brothers. I don't know.
Yeah. But
then that set up the storyline with the whole concussion thing.
Yeah, and it's another time that Sean didn't drop the title in the ring. He just relinquished it.
Oh, the Intercontinental title?
Yeah, to Dean Douglas because he didn't want to put him over.
Can you blame him?
I mean, they gave him a bad gimmick. I mean,
I don't understand
he's not
why
a
they
bad
had
wrestler.
To change Shane Douglas.
He's the franchise
character itself because he was a tremendous athlete.
Because
ton of potential.
Because the problem with Vince is that he has to put his stamp on somebody. So you can have somebody come in, and if he didn't create them, he wants to put his stamp. Like, oh, I'm going to redo you. He does it. He does it to a lot of people. There's certain people he can't do it. Like a guy like Flair, he couldn't do that with.
AJ Styles, he couldn't do it.
Yeah, there's certain guys that were so established that he couldn't do that with. Even Vader, Jim Cornette told a story that he wanted to call him the Mastodon. That was his gimmick.
Well, they did, but they just used it as a nickname.
Right.
Instead, they kept referring to his name as the man they call Vader.
The man, yeah.
And I never understood why he just kept calling him. I know they couldn't use Big Van Vader because there was a whole lawsuit a few years back.
Right. That was
with New Japan. But I just.
The click is another story for another day, but because that's a whole other story. But
that was like a mafia.
Yeah, getting back to the locker room. So there's the stage there. There's a bit, I really wish that Bret wouldn't have told him to turn off the camera because and Bret told him because they were documenting Wrestling in Shadows, and Bret said turn off the camera. And Sean is there, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't have anything. I swear to God, he's crying. I didn't have anything
on my life. I had nothing to do with this.
I didn't have anything to do with it.
I don't want no part of this. Right. He's running out of there because the story was Sean, Hunter, and China all went back to the hotel, and they're all sitting there scared, going, "What did we just do?"
Right.
When they claimed they didn't have any part of this.
Yeah, no part of it. And the thing is, like, there's a good scene in Wrestling with Shadows where it's Hunter and Bret's wife, and Bret's wife is
and she's going at him, and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
I swear to God, I
had nothing to do with it.
She knew all those guys were in on it, and Sean was apparently in fear for his life.
He was because you notice when he won the belt, and he was all pissed off, supposedly at the outcome, how quickly Gerald Briscoe was trying to get him to the back,
right?
Because they were afraid of a possible riot with the fans,
right?
Or the backlash from the boys in the locker room.
Well, it didn't help that Sean was humping the Canadian flag in the beginning of the match.
or how many times on Monday Night Raw he was blowing his nose with it too.
Yeah, that didn't help.
But nobody said he wasn't disrespectful back then.
Right, yeah. I mean, the funny thing is that when Briscoe was trying to, was it Briscoe or Patterson, I think, was trying to train him to fight because they were scared that Bret was going to shoot on him in the ring. So the night before he was training, crazy, man. But he was in fear of his life, and Bret said that he was going to destroy him. He was going to kill him, but that he wasn't 100% positive that he knew
involved.
That he was involved. He said, "I couldn't live with myself if I did something
to him and I find out I was wrong."
Right. So he didn't. So because of that.
Well, he took his anger out on the one guy that didn't, and Vince told him, "I'll give you one free one," and he clocked him.
Yeah,
but Bret, supposedly he told him, "I'll give you one freebie." But in all honesty, if he didn't say that and Bret actually did that, don't you think Vince maybe would have filed a lawsuit or had him arrested? I mean, come on.
I don't know. Bret told a completely different story. Bret said that they locked up.
There was two sides to that one too.
Yeah, Bret said they locked up. He tried to wrestle with him, and then Bret said he gave him a Mike Tyson uppercut and knocked him out cold.
Yeah, and then he pointed. Another story, Bret says he just punched him once and he went down.
Yeah, and then he pointed at I think it was Slaughter and the Briscoe brothers and Shane. He says, "If you guys don't get out of here, you guys are next." Now, the cool thing about this story is I don't know if you remember this. Even though Rick Rude was part of DX, Rick Rude was in Bret Hart's corner when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
He stood by Bret in the locker room, and he right after the whole thing happened, and Bret says, and he told Bret, "I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry, if they try anything, I got your back." And he was ready to fight with Bret because him and Bret were very, very, very tight.
Oh yeah, they went back to the old school days.
Yep.
Back when the Hart Foundation and Ravishing Rick. Oh yeah.
So he stood by him. So it was Bulldog, Owen, Neidhart, obviously.
But here's the funny thing: Owen Hart was the only one that knew about this going down. Because remember, I had said something about this at one point in the past. They offered him a bigger contract right around the time, right before Survivor Series was going to happen, because Vince told him, "You're the only one that's going to survive this, and you're the only one I want." Because you notice right after Bret left, Bulldog and Anvil gone in WCW within a matter of weeks.
Well, he didn't need those guys.
He didn't want them. He wanted Owen.
Yeah. Well, Owen
he gave him a bigger contract because Owen could have walked this as well. The Hart Foundation also showed up on Monday Night.
Nah, Owen was still on the contract. Like guys like Neidhart, though he was on a pay by appearance. He wasn't on a guaranteed.
But Bulldog was.
Bulldog
had a contract for another year.
But they just released him. They didn't want him. Owen was still on the contract, and Owen actually wanted to get out, and he wanted to go to WCW with Bret.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince McMahon told Bret, "I'm not letting him out of the contract no matter what." And to shut up Owen, try to appease him, keep him happy, they gave him more money. That's the story, and that story is from the wife, from Owen Hart's wife. That's what happened. He did give him a raise, but it was only kind of like, "Hey, just shut the hell up." And they said he was going to get a push, and they said he was going to get a push, which never happened.
No, because from then on out, it was pretty much him constantly having a battle Triple H in China with the European title.
Yeah, I mean,
and he took the loss at WrestleMania, and his fan favorite gimmick, which was actually working with the crowd, was kind of diminishing, and then he winds up working with the Nation of Domination, right. And then that didn't go over well, and then he formed a tag team with Jeff Jarrett, which I think was pretty good, because the two of them had great chemistry together in the ring as tag champions. But you're right, Owen never got that full push, and we'll talk about him in another episode with Uncrowned Champions. Yeah. I do believe that at the DX In Your House pay-per-view in December, instead of Ken Shamrock, I do believe it should have been Owen Hart facing Shawn Michaels, regardless if the outcome didn't go in his favor.
100%.
I think the two of them should have fought it out based on the backlash of Survivor Series.
Of course.
And I think it would have been a great match. I mean,
definitely.
Shawn Michaels getting put in the ankle lock by Shamrock, and his lollipop is still in his mouth. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, that right there already was like, okay, this match is not going to go over well.
Yeah, pretty much. But then the whole thing with the aftermath, the thing that pissed me off about Shawn is apparently Shawn told Bret, "Hey, I'm not going to come out on Raw, and I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm not going to do any of that stuff." And
meanwhile, the Mini-Me shows up, and was it the next night or 2 weeks after?
I think it was the next night. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it was the next night on Raw.
Yeah.
And Rick Rude was trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
But
But then
that
Rick
didn't work.
Rude. But do you know what Rick Rude did after that? Immediately after Montreal and the whole fight, after he knocked Vince out, after Bret knocked Vince out, he got on the phone with Eric Bischoff and negotiated a contract and told him everything that happened. That's why. How much longer later was it when
It wasn't too much longer after he showed up on both shows on the same night.
the same night.
I believe it was right before Bret showed up.
It was before, because he says, "What a difference a day makes."
What a difference a day makes.
Right. Was that when they had the Canadian flags, or no? That was.
Yeah, because they were about to announce that at Starrcade Bret Hart would be there.
Yeah.
Or he was going to come out on Nitro the following week,
Yeah.
and Rick Rude is standing there with the NWO, and you got a taped Monday Night Raw with him out there with the mini-me. And I actually think it was the night before. It was within that 2-week span of Survivor Series. And he's out there with DX cutting a promo with them. And if you turn over to the Monday Nitro, he's standing there live with the NWO.
Yeah.
And that was classic.
No, it was
and
great.
If anybody didn't know that the show was recorded a few weeks in advance, now you did.
Now you did, exactly. But
then that eventually came to bite Nitro in the butt, mainly because the one night, and you remember this, when Tony Schiavone announced that Mick Foley was going to win the world title, and he said, "Oh, that's going to put some butts in the seat." Everybody turned right over to, "Oh, he's going to win the title. I want to see this match."
Yeah, everybody.
And that was another
it was dumb.
nail in the coffin.
I'm stupid. Because
I remember I was one of the ones that did that.
I did it too. I said, "Wait, Mick Foley?
He's going to win against The Rock. I got to see this."
Speaking of Foley, do you know that Foley went on strike after Montreal only for one day, but he went on strike? He didn't show up at Raw the next day.
It doesn't surprise me. Like I said, I'm surprised a lot of guys didn't bounce from this, mainly because they didn't know who to trust. The one good thing that came out of the whole Montreal thing is the villainous character of now Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, by accident, but yeah.
It happened. Yeah, but it just happened to happen, and it worked out for the better. Obviously, everybody remembers the Austin McMahon feuds and all that stuff.
But the funny thing is, when he cut that Bret screwed Bret interview, that promo, he didn't think that he was doing a heel character.
No, but exactly that was creating the Mr. McMahon.
That was creating. Yeah. It actually worked out though. It's funny because Mick Foley said, deep down inside, I don't even think Vince McMahon thinks that Bret screwed Bret. No. Deep down inside.
No, I think he knows he had a piece in it. But again, you're telling your boss, at the risk of repeating myself, you're telling your boss, "I'm leaving your company. I'm going to your rival. I'm not dropping the title. This is how I'm going out. Even if I'm Vince McMahon, I'm going, no, you're not. My company, my belt, my way." And unfortunately, this is what he had to do. Perfect example was what we were talking about Bash at the Beach 2000. Hogan pulls his creative control card with Vince Russo and Jeff Jarrett. This is the way they wrote the script 17 different ways to where Hogan doesn't come out with the belt, and it was unacceptable. So what did Vince Russo and them do? They did business for him. It's one thing that you have your creative control card, but when they're trying to establish a way that they want to do this, and you're absolutely telling them, "No, I'm not going to work with you." When you put their back against the wall, especially Vince McMahon, who was one step away from possibly selling the World Wrestling Federation at that time, because he's losing in the ratings, he's losing his guys, he's getting killed, and now you're one of your top guys is doing this to you. He finally couldn't take it anymore. And to this day, I do not disagree with what Vince McMahon did.
The only reason I really, really disagree with it, I understand where you're coming from. The only reason I disagree with it is because Bret did have that. There's two things. Bret had the creative control. That's number one. In his contract, it was in the contract.
Really, nobody else had in WWE. Right, that was unheard of.
He was the only one that had it. The only one that had it. Vince shouldn't have put that in the contract. He did. It was what it was, and I felt like he owed Bret a little bit more. Given Bret's tenure in the WWE, given his father's standing in the wrestling business, everything. The loyalty that Bret had shown Vince throughout all those years, he deserved a little bit better than that,
But in this case, it was like wrong place at the wrong time. Stressed out Vince McMahon, and you're wanting to do this, and I can't take it anymore, and I'm tired of everything not working in my favor. But again, I've said a dozen times, why didn't you just take the title off him earlier and you don't have the situation?
They didn't. Vince created that situation. Cornette has said that Vince was so egotistical that in his mind, he felt like, well, at the end, we're gonna figure it out anyway. Like at the end, Bret's gonna do whatever I want him to do anyway. That's what he thought, and he didn't think that it was gonna come to this, and it did. So, and
Unfortunately,
the rest is history, and it's probably the biggest story ever in the history of the business.
and when Bret Hart goes to WCW, there's no direction for him. All he was doing for the first few months was fighting old feuds from WWE. He fought Ric Flair, he fought Kurt Hennig, Lex Luger. It wasn't until he had a fairly decent match with Booker T. I believe it was for the television title. You know, they had a few good matches there, but Bret had even said there's no direction here. It's just you get to the show, and 5 minutes beforehand, you're going to find out what's going on. Now, it was funny before Bret got there, when they had their production meeting, there was only one guy in WCW's production meeting that was skeptical about him being there, and that was Larry Zbyszko. Because when Larry said, should any of us be concerned that this is Vince's number one guy and he's letting him go without a fight? Don't you think we got to worry about this? Like, has he done everything he could do? Is he starting the downhill turn of his career? He was skeptical about it, and he had every right to be, and I think he was right. Because this wasn't the Bret Hart that we all knew in the 1990s. This was a confused and lost Bret Hart trying to find a direction in a place that had no direction.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of we're gonna have to get into that in another episode. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff in Bret Hart, his WCW run, that was, direction, and also probably him too. So definitely there's something to be said about that. But I mean, the bottom line is, so the big thing is, I think that Vince screwed Bret, and you think.
I think Bret screwed Bret.
I think Bret screwed Bret. Okay. You've been consistent since the day that I met you. You've never
24 years. It's not going to change.
Nope. You've never come off of that, and I've never come off that. I feel like Vince screwed him.
And I'm not saying Shawn, Triple H, Vince McMahon, or Bret Hart. None of them. They all had a hand in this. None of them are innocent. But at the end of the day, the boss of the company, this is how he wanted it done. And I can't see it being any other way.
All right, well, there you have it. You guys decide.
Oh, I'm sure everybody in the group has got their take on it, and I'd love to hear the feedback from you guys. I've never shied away from anybody's point of view, and I'm not gonna judge anybody for their feeling on it. If you feel I'm wrong or if Mike is wrong, tell us. Prove us wrong.
Yeah.
In the words of Chris Benoit, prove me wrong. And if I see a valid point, believe me, I would sway the other way. But I just don't. I don't see it here.
Yeah, man, I can respect that. I can definitely respect that. And this is just the first of a lot of episodes we're gonna have.
Well, luckily, this is the only one that you and I won't see eye to eye.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unless we do some superstars personas on here that, again, we may not see eye to eye. But
for
the most part, everything will pretty much be equal.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a big debate for years, between wrestling fans and wrestlers themselves over, who was ultimately at fault and what was right.
I've spoken to young kids that I know in the neighborhood maybe that have been wrestling fans, and the one thing they actually know of in wrestling now, some of them now obviously just know Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and so on and so forth. But to find out, but from one of these guys asking me, "Hey, did you ever see the Survivor Series 1997? Did you ever watch that? Do you know about it?" I mean, if you're a true wrestling fan, you know about Montreal, hands down. And I was I was impressed to hear this. And this was one of my son's favorite topics, especially when we watched the pay-per-view. I don't know what his thinking is on it. Honestly, I've never asked him. But if he swayed towards Bret or Vince, it makes no difference to me. Just prove to me or back up why you feel
right. Why you feel the way you feel. Yeah.
And I can understand anybody's point of view. I'm not gonna dog them for it. No.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. I forgot to bring this up. There's people like Scott Hall that think that Montreal was a work. Even Hebner himself has came out and said that it's a work. Now, There's no way that this is a work. Let's just get out there. There's no way that this was a work.
I can't see it. Again, like comparing it to Bash on the Beach, where they attempted to make that a work, but it really wasn't. I can't see 1997 Survivor Series being a work that they were doing this from the word jump. I cannot see it.
I mean,
This was animosity of a year and a half.
Yeah, this was and not only that, somebody like Scott Hall, he's a troll, and he's got a lot of heat with Bret, and that's all he's doing is just saying that just to piss Bret off because he knows how serious Bret takes the business and has his whole life, so.
Bret's one of the few guys, and this is why I respect Bret to no end. He eats, sleeps, and breathes this business, and his morals and his work ethic is rivaled by nobody I can think of. And I mean, I can't see him honestly taking this whole year and a half leading up to one match and saying this was a work. This isn't a Hogan Sting NWO thing that took a year. And ended horribly.
And ended, yeah, but that's
with Bret Hart being the referee. And I don't agree with Bret's debut being that. But then again, that's for another day.
That's for another day.
But yeah, if Scott Hall feels that way, my only thing would be, okay, prove it. And it's hard to prove when you're not in the company and you're not there. I can't prove that any of this stuff that these guys did behind closed doors, I was not there. So if Scott Hall isn't in the WWE at this point, I just can't see where he's getting this from unless Shawn Michaels told him.
Right, exactly. He's close friends with Shawn and Hunter.
Shawn has never admitted throughout the years that this was a work.
Yeah, no, he's never said that. No.
Even in 2010 when Bret came back and they buried the hatchet.
Yeah.
Not even then did Shawn ever say anything about this being that.
Yeah, he's just trolling. He's just trolling. So I guess that about wraps it up. All right, so
I hope everybody enjoys this. Tell your friends, subscribe to it. Tell us what you think. Give us your feedback and some of the episodes you guys may want us to see us do. We'll be doing them monthly. In some instances, depending on the topic, might be 2 a month, like the Rise and Fall of WCW, 2-parter maybe in the same month. Probably be better off that way. Just give us your feedback and be nice.
Let us know. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.